They laughed the moment Earth entered the chamber. Not a ripple of amusement. Not the restrained politeness of ancient diplomats pretending to tolerate a lesser voice. This was something sharper, louder, echoing laughter that rose from every tier of the Galactic Council spire and crashed down like judgment already passed. It filled the air before a single word of human introduction could be spoken. The chamber itself amplified it. A colossal structure of glass-like alloys and living crystal, suspended in the vacuum between stars, designed to carry sound with perfect clarity across impossible distances. Every laugh stretched, multiplied, deepened, until it became something physical. Something heavy. Something meant to be felt. Ambassador Lyra Kane did not flinch. She stood at the center of the obsidian platform, alone, exactly as requested by Council Protocol 4, low-tier species representation. No guards. No advisors. No fleet in orbit to signal strength. Just a human figure beneath a sky of watching giants. Above her, the council tiers curved upward in vast concentric rings, each one occupied by beings that did not share a common form, language, or even understanding of existence, but shared, in that moment, a single unified reaction. Amusement. A towering figure of liquid metal composition rippled as it leaned forward, its voice translated into something almost understandable. This is the species that petitioned for equal recognition? Another voice, colder, multi-layered, followed without pause. Their vessels still rely on combustion derivatives. Their communications lag behind baseline council efficiency. Their biology is inefficient. A third did not even bother with translation. It projected imagery instead, crude approximations of human technology, exaggerated and distorted for effect. Rockets stumbling through atmosphere. Early orbital stations spinning like fragile toys. The laughter intensified. Primitives, one translation finally rendered clearly. The word hung in the air like a verdict carved into stone. Lyra's gaze lifted, not hurriedly, not defensively, but with deliberate control. She took in the chamber as a whole. The impossible architecture. The endless rows of observers. The quiet certainty in their posture that this moment was not negotiation. It was confirmation. They had already decided what humanity was. The temperature in the chamber shifted subtly, responding to the collective energy of its occupants. Light refracted differently across the crystalline walls, casting fractured reflections across Lyra's uniform. In those reflections, she saw herself repeated 1,000 times, small, singular, surrounded. And yet, steady. Inside her chest, her heartbeat did not race. It measured. Slow. Even. Controlled. Because she understood something the council did not. This was not the moment humanity was being judged. This was the moment the galaxy was choosing how it would remember underestimating them. The laughter began to fade, not because it had run its course, but because attention shifted. The council was preparing to speak formally now, to turn mockery into policy, amusement into consequence. But the echo of it still lingered. Lingering, like a sound that didn't realize it had already gone too far. Lyra inhaled quietly, the recycled air of the spire carrying a faint metallic sharpness that spoke of ancient systems and older power. Her fingers remained relaxed at her sides. No clenched fists. No outward reaction. Just presence. Because humanity had not come here to respond to laughter. They had come here to witness it. And somewhere, far beyond the chamber's walls, far beyond the awareness of every being present, something else was already moving in the dark between stars. Silent. Patient. Waiting for the laughter to end, the council spire did not orbit a star. It owned the space between them. Suspended in a gravitational equilibrium engineered beyond human comprehension, the structure stretched across vacuum like a cathedral built by civilizations that had outlived the need for planets. Its surface refracted starlight into impossible spectrums, colors that seemed to shift depending on who observed them, as if even light was forced to adapt to the will of those who ruled here. Inside, the central chamber expanded outward in layered rings so vast they vanished into haze. Entire species occupied single tiers. Some existed as solid forms seated in monumental thrones. Others hovered as fields of energy, flickering like contained storms. A few weren't visible at all, only represented by distortions in the air where their presence bent reality itself. At the center of it all, a single human. Ambassador Lyra Kane stood on the obsidian floor, its polished surface reflecting not just her image, but a fragmented version of the entire chamber above her. In that reflection, the council appeared warped, elongated, stretched, almost unreal. Or perhaps, revealed. Her boots made no sound when she shifted her weight. The chamber's acoustics were too precise for that. Every noise here was intentional. Every silence, controlled. She had been instructed to come alone. That alone told her everything she needed to know. This was not diplomacy. This was demonstration. Above her, a rotating holographic construct slowly assembled itself, a map of known space, layered in luminous detail. Star systems pulsed with activity. Trade routes flickered like veins of light. Entire empires stretched across sectors in complex geometries of influence and control. And then there was Earth. Small. Blue. Almost insignificant against the overwhelming scale of the display. A soft highlight framed it, not as a point of importance, but as a point of curiosity. Like an object under observation rather than a participant in the system. Lyra's eyes tracked the map carefully. Not the size of territories. Not the density of fleets. The patterns. She noticed how human space had been placed, slightly offset from major trade arteries, isolated just enough to remain dependent. Close enough to monitor. Far enough to control. It was deliberate. Everything here was deliberate. A ripple moved through the chamber as council members adjusted their focus. Conversations, some audible, some transmitted through frequencies beyond human perception, shifted toward a single topic. Her. A low hum built beneath the surface of the room, almost imperceptible, like a distant engine that never stopped running. It wasn't machinery. It was the weight of attention. Lyra felt it press against her, not physically, but cognitively. As if every intelligence present was measuring her at once. Not just her words, but her posture, her breathing, the subtle micro-movements she refused to let become visible. She had been trained for this. Not to impress them. But to endure them. A flicker of motion above caught her eye. The holographic map shifted again, layers peeling back to reveal deeper structures. Military distributions. Resource flows. Predictive models. Earth's projection changed with it. New data appeared around it, annotations written in alien symbology that quickly translated into something far more clinical than insulting. Developmental tier, primitive. Strategic value, minimal. Containment feasibility, high. Lyra didn't react. But somewhere deep inside, something cold settled into place. Not anger. Not fear. Understanding. This chamber wasn't deciding humanity's future. It had already categorized it. The decision that remained was not whether Earth would be controlled. But how gently. The lights above dimmed slightly as the council prepared to formalize proceedings. The hum deepened. The map stabilized. And for a moment, just a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to pause, waiting for the next sentence to be spoken. Lyra lifted her gaze again, meeting the vast, layered presence of civilizations that believed they had already measured humanity completely. They saw a primitive species. A minor world. A predictable outcome. She saw something else entirely. A system so certain of its superiority, it had forgotten how dangerous underestimation could be. And somewhere beyond the spire, beyond the reach of its sensors and its certainty, Something human was already moving. The matter is simple. The voice did not rise. It did not need to. It carried with it the weight of a civilization that had not been questioned in millennia. When the Karath Dominion delegate spoke, the chamber itself seemed to adjust, light dimming, sound narrowing, focus collapsing inward toward a single, unavoidable point. Ambassador Lyra Kane felt it like pressure behind her eyes. Above her, the holographic construct shifted again. Earth's projection expanded, not in scale, but in scrutiny. Layers of data peeled open around it like an autopsy performed in slow motion. Atmospheric composition. Industrial output. Energy signatures. Military capacity. Every weakness, illuminated. Earth lacks the capacity to defend its borders, the Karath voice continued, each word measured with surgical precision. It lacks the infrastructure required for independent survival in contested regions. It lacks the strategic foresight demonstrated by advanced civilizations. A pause. Then, colder. It lacks relevance. The word echoed, not as mockery this time, but as classification. Across the council tiers, murmurs rippled outward. Not laughter now. Agreement. Quiet, unanimous, and far more dangerous. Lyra kept her posture steady, but her attention sharpened. She tracked the reactions, not the words. Which species leaned forward? Which remained still? Which had already disengaged, satisfied with the outcome before it was finalized? This was no longer a discussion. It was a procedural conclusion. The hologram above pulsed once, and then the proposal materialized. Clean. Efficient. Final. Reclassification protocol, Earth. Status, protected primitive zone. Enforcement, Council oversight authorized. The words hung in the air like a sentence being written into law. Protected. Primitive. Contained. A diplomatic phrasing built to sound benevolent, while stripping autonomy down to nothing. Lyra's fingers tightened just slightly at her sides. Not enough to be noticed by most. But enough for her to feel the shift within herself. This was the moment. The exact point where history stopped asking for permission, and started deciding outcomes. "You misunderstand us," she said. Her voice didn't rise. But it carried. Not through volume, but through clarity that cut cleanly through the layered acoustics of the chamber. For a fraction of a second, the room hesitated. Then, laughter returned. Louder than before. Sharper. Because now it wasn't just dismissal. It was dismissal confirmed. "You misunderstand your place," another delegate replied, its form flickering between visible and conceptual states. "Your species has not yet demonstrated the capacity for independent survival beyond controlled parameters." Around the chamber, the holographic map began to adjust again. New boundaries formed, soft at first, then hardening into defined zones of control. Human space was being redrawn in real time. Not invaded. Rewritten. Far beyond the spire, in the silent depths between stars, long-range sensors embedded within Council infrastructure began to register minor anomalies. Data fluctuations at the edge of detection thresholds. Unusual gravitational readings. Brief distortions that corrected themselves before full analysis could complete. Routine noise. Ignored. Inside the chamber, Lyra saw none of it. But she felt something shift. Not externally. Internally. A quiet alignment of thought. A recognition that the conversation had already passed the point where words mattered. Above her, the classification protocol pulsed again, awaiting final confirmation. All it required was consent from the Council majority. All it required was a galaxy agreeing that humanity was small enough to be contained. The chamber grew quieter now, not out of respect, but anticipation. The kind that comes before a decision that will never be reversed. Lyra exhaled slowly. Not in defeat. Not in fear. But in preparation. Because somewhere, beyond the reach of every sensor in that room, something had already begun to answer the decision they were about to make. And the Council, so certain, so absolute, had not even realized. They were no longer the only ones defining what happened next. The first dreadnought did not arrive. It resolved. At the very edge of the Council Spire's sensor horizon, where detection systems blurred the boundary between absence and presence, something changed. Not a spike in energy. Not a breach in spacetime. Just a quiet correction, as if reality had been missing a line of code, and finally remembered to insert it. A shape emerged. Not constructed. Not assembled. Not warped in from another dimension with the violent signatures every advanced civilization had long since learned to detect. It simply was there. At first, the Spire's automated systems dismissed it. A phantom return. A reflection anomaly caused by gravitational lensing. A data ghost born from the density of the surrounding starfield. Then it didn't go away. The object held position, silent, immense, and utterly unresponsive to standard classification protocols. Its surface absorbed light rather than reflecting it, a matte void that seemed to swallow even the concept of illumination. Edges blurred not because they were unclear, but because they refused to resolve into stable geometry. Inside the Council chamber, the holographic display flickered. A minor glitch. Then another. Lyra Kane saw it before anyone else reacted, the brief distortion in the star map above her. A single pixel shift. A fractional misalignment. Small enough to ignore. Too precise to be random. Beyond the spire, the anomaly multiplied. A second dreadnought resolved into existence. Then a third. Each one appearing not with force, but with inevitability, like answers surfacing to a question the galaxy had not realized it was asking. Sensor arrays across the Council network surged into full analysis mode. Long-range scanners swept across the void, feeding torrents of data into classification engines designed to catalog entire species in seconds. The result returned almost instantly. Error, no match found. Again. Error, no match found. Across hundreds of independent systems, the same response echoed, translated into different languages, different logic frameworks, different cognitive interpretations. All saying the same thing. We do not know what this is. Inside the chamber, the laughter stopped. Not gradually. Not awkwardly. Instantly. Like a sound cut from existence. Council members leaned forward, some physically, others through shifts in energy density or conceptual focus. The massive tiers of observers, once so certain, now adjusted their attention toward the outer display feed streaming into the chamber. The holographic map expanded, zooming outward from Earth's position to reveal the surrounding void. And there they were. Dozens of them now. No, more. The number was increasing faster than the system could confidently count. Each dreadnought larger than the Spire's primary defense constructs. Each one silent. Still. Watching. Not forming an attack pattern. Forming a presence. A Kareth delegate attempted to initiate a full-spectrum scan, its internal systems projecting complex lattice equations across the display as it searched for propulsion signatures, energy cores, weapon arrays, anything that would make these constructs understandable. The equations collapsed. Not failed. Collapsed, like structures built on assumptions that no longer applied. They are not broadcasting, another Council voice reported, tension threading through its translation for the first time. No signals. No identification protocols. No. It stopped. Because there was nothing else to say. No data. No explanation. Just existence. Lyra remained where she stood, her gaze steady as the chamber around her shifted from dominance to uncertainty. You called us primitive, she said quietly. No one laughed this time. Outside, the nearest dreadnought adjusted its position by a fraction, so small it should have been meaningless. But every sensor in the spire registered it simultaneously. And for the first time in its history, the Galactic Council did not know what would happen next. Inside the chamber, silence did not feel empty. It felt pressurized. Every eye, every sensor, every consciousness, remained fixed on the expanding projection of the dreadnoughts beyond the spire. What had once been a distant anomaly was now undeniable presence. Massive. Patient. Unreadable. Ambassador Lyra Kane finally lifted her gaze fully to the council tiers. You called us primitive, she said again. This time, the words did not drift. They landed. No one interrupted her. Because for the first time since her arrival, the council was no longer certain it understood the situation well enough to speak. Outside, one of the dreadnoughts shifted. Not aggressively. Not even decisively. Just a subtle realignment, a fractional movement that forced every tracking system in the spire to recalculate its position simultaneously. The recalculation failed. Every time. Coordinates flickered. Locked. Slipped. Relocked. As if the ship's position was not changing, but refusing to remain fixed in a way the galaxy could agree on. A Kareth warnode initiated a defensive protocol without formal authorization. Across the spire's outer perimeter, ancient weapon arrays powered up, structures capable of cracking planets, of rewriting battlefields with a single discharge. Targeting solutions formed instantly. And then hesitated. Not jammed. Not blocked. Hesitated, like a thought that could not complete itself. Fire, the Kareth delegate commanded. Nothing happened. Inside the firing systems, conflicting data cascaded through layers of logic. One sequence confirmed a valid target. Another invalidated it. A third suggested the target existed in multiple states simultaneously, none stable enough to justify engagement. The command repeated. Fire. The weapons remained charged. Unresolved. Across the chamber, murmurs rose, not of arrogance now, but of fracture. Systems that had governed war for eons were encountering something they could not interpret as threat, or non-threat. They could not decide. Lyra watched it unfold, her expression unchanged, but her voice carried something new now. Not defiance. Finality. We learned something early, she said. Strength isn't just what you show. It's what you choose to hide until it matters. Another dreadnought adjusted its orientation. Then another. The formation shifted, not into attack alignment, but into something far more controlled. A geometric lattice that expanded outward, subtly, precisely, until every direct vector toward Earth's position was intersected. Not blocked. Defined. The Council's external sensors lit up with warnings, not of incoming fire, but of restricted possibility. Every potential trajectory toward human space now intersected with these silent constructs. Every model attempting to simulate engagement returned cascading failure states. The galaxy's most advanced war intelligences began to degrade, not from damage, but from contradiction. They're not deploying weapons, a Veil analyst whispered, voice barely audible. No, another replied, understanding dawning too late. They are the condition under which weapons fail. Lyra took a single step forward on the obsidian floor. The sound, soft, controlled, echoed farther than it should have. We didn't come here to threaten you, she said. A pause. We came to let you finish underestimating us. Outside, the largest dreadnought turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Its surface consumed the light of nearby stars until it appeared less like an object, and more like a boundary drawn across reality itself. Inside the spire, something ancient and deeply ingrained finally broke. Certainty. Because for the first time in its history, the Galactic Council faced a force it could not classify, could not predict, and, most terrifying of all, could not confidently choose to fight. The end did not sound like victory. It sounded like something vast, choosing to go quiet. Inside the council chamber, no one moved. Not because they were frozen in fear, but because movement itself suddenly felt like a decision that required certainty, and certainty had vanished. The great tiers of power, once filled with postures of authority and effortless dominance, now held something far more fragile. Hesitation. Above them, the holographic display recalibrated again, struggling to stabilize the image of Earth. The classification tags flickered: primitive, protected, contained, each one appearing, failing, and dissolving into blank space before the system could commit to it. Outside the spire, the dreadnoughts remained. Silent. Unmoving. Absolute. They did not advance. They did not threaten. They simply existed in a configuration that rewrote the meaning of distance, of targeting, of intent. Every vector toward Earth was no longer a path, it was a question with no answer. And the galaxy had stopped trying to answer it. The proposal, one council voice began, then faltered. Because the proposal no longer made sense. How do you contain something you cannot define? How do you classify something that invalidates classification itself? The luminous text above the chamber flickered violently one last time, then erased itself completely. No vote. No formal withdrawal. Just absence. Ambassador Lyra Kane turned slowly, her gaze sweeping across the silent assembly. Where there had once been laughter, there was now calculation, rapid, desperate, incomplete. Entire civilizations were re-evaluating their understanding of humanity in real time, rewriting centuries of assumptions in the span of a few breaths. But even that was not enough. Because what they were witnessing was not just power. It was restraint. Lyra took a step forward. Then another. Each footfall echoed through the chamber like punctuation at the end of a sentence the council had not realized it was writing. "We never asked for recognition," she said quietly. Her voice carried, clear, steady, undeniable. "We asked for time." A pause. "And you gave it to us." No one spoke. No one dared to interrupt. Outside, the nearest dreadnought shifted ever so slightly, its silhouette eclipsing a distant star for a fraction of a second before settling back into stillness. Not a threat. Not a warning. A reminder. The Council's defense systems powered down one by one, not by command, but by conclusion. There was no scenario left in which activation led to a coherent outcome. No model that ended in victory. No calculation that did not collapse under its own contradictions. For the first time in its existence, the Galactic Council had nothing to say. Lyra reached the edge of the obsidian platform and paused. Behind her, the chamber stretched into silence. Before her, a path opened, unobstructed, unchallenged. She did not look back. She didn't need to. Because the message had already been delivered in the only language that mattered. Humanity had not come to prove its strength. It had come to show what happened when strength was withheld long enough to become incomprehensible. Beyond the spire, the dreadnoughts held position, unchanged, eternal, like boundaries drawn into the fabric of the galaxy itself. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the stars around Earth began to feel different. Not because they had changed, but because everyone looking at them now understood something they hadn't before. Humanity was never primitive. It was patient. And patience, given enough time, becomes something even empires learn to fear.